And I'm going to close all this stuff. Okay, so the point of today's class is basically to show you how to more easily collect that ICANN data that Bob asked for last week or the week before last, because I know some people aren't doing what I do, and I emailed the results back to Bob in like 10 minutes, but I totally understand how it would be a nightmare if you didn't do what I do. Okay, so I said to Bob, because the first thing he asked is, how'd you give me that data, and how'd you do it so quickly? And is it real, or did you just guess it all? And in reality, it was real, pretty much. There's a couple ICANNs that I had to guess a little bit, because I didn't realize that I had made some mistakes. So we're going to go back to chapter 1, and I'm going to show you how I gave him the data for the ICANNs from chapter 1 and chapter 2. Okay, now the ICANNs are listed up here on the top of my course. And there's my ICANNs and the ICANN numbers I use. In my course, the 1 denotes the chapter, and the dash and the 2 denotes the ICANN that I'm referring to. Okay, so this is what I sent him when he asked for ICANNs, and then I use these throughout this chapter as the ICANN numbers. So what I did when I set up my chapter tests, and I'm going to go ahead and go to my chapter test. That's my summative test, and that's the only thing I based my data off of was the summative data, which is the only summative data I have for chapter 1 is in this test. So when I built my test so that every single question started with the ICANN statement number. Okay, so they all have 1-11 or 1-01 or 1-04. All of them had that at the front of every single question when I built the question. So that's one of the things, that's the precursor that made it really easy, that in order to do what I'm going to show you how to do, you have to go back and edit your questions to do that. This is not the part of the edit that the student sees. The student does not see the 1-11 at all. This is in the part of the question that only we see. So in the question name up top, they all say whatever the ICANN is, and then something to tell me something about the question. The student does not see that. Okay? So in order to easily collect the data, the first thing you have to do is to put that in the start of your questions, which means that as I go through each test, and I just started doing this last year, and there are some tests that I don't have this done for, so I actually just did chapter 3 today on the way to base, because I didn't have all my questions in chapter 3 done. So I have to go and put that at the start of the question, and an ICANN can be listed in more than one. None of those are, but in chapter 3 I have 3-3, 4, 5 on a matching question. Okay? Meaning that it was matching it in more than one ICANN, so when I do the data that I'm going to show you how I did it later, I have to make sure I take that into account on each one of those totals that I went through and did. So that's the first thing. And if you don't know, whenever you're working on a quiz, and I'm looking at a question like this quiz, even though I've already given the quiz, I can still edit it. So if you wanted to do this for a test you already did on a previous chapter, you can't add and remove questions on a quiz afterwards, but you can certainly edit them. So all you have to do is click the little hand there, and then up top, this is what the students see. Up here, I just added the ICANN number that this one applies to in the front. So when I did it the first time, I just printed out my ICANNs and had them in front of me, and I went through the test and I said, oh, that's ICANN this, and I just added that at the front. You don't have to have the parentheses, but you'll see why it needs to kind of match alphanumerically. So if there's more than 9, you want to put a 0 in front of the lower numbers so that they're in alphanumeric order. And I'll show you why. So when I'm done with this test, and I go to results, I can go to item analysis. And this is what I use to review every single one of my tests at the end of a test, and it just happens to be an easy way to collect that same data. Okay? So this item analysis shows, and I can order it by question text, and you can see now they're ordered by ICANN statements because that's 103, then it goes 103, then now my 104s, now my 105s. So I can see now, and this is why I had to fudge 2 numbers, I did not ask a single question on ICANN 1 or 2. And I didn't realize that until Bob asked for those numbers, and then I was like, poop, I missed ICANN 1 and 2. Okay, so what I did then, because I had those all in there, I just go down to the bottom. If I can scroll down with this mouse, and I download an Excel format. And I open up those results in Excel. And I'm going to do this quickly, and then I have to enable editing. Okay, so there are some items that didn't matter. This question number, don't care. I just delete the column. Okay, this I didn't care about, and this I didn't care about. I didn't care all the way to over here. I deleted all those, and I didn't even care about these. So I went and deleted those columns, and I'll show you why here in a second. Here's the question. What did I just do there? Trying to make this one a little bigger. And then, there we go. And then I went and I sorted the data by column B. And now all I have is the question and how many people got it right. The other stuff down here, this mouse is driving me crazy. The other stuff down here didn't even matter to me anymore. Look at this mouse. I need to go get a new mouse in this room, don't I? The other stuff down here didn't even matter to me anymore, so I went ahead and deleted that. So now I've got each ICANN with what percentage of the kids got it right. And what I did was, and this is a simplified way of doing it, I went and averaged them. So if you don't know the way to average, you type equal average. And I said for ICANN 3, which is the first one, I'm averaging together the, it's this mouse, I swear, equals average. And then I'm trying to grab these three columns. There we go. So ICANN 3, 89% of my kids got it. Okay. Now, the reason I say this is simple because you can see that two of these are true, false, and two of them are multiple choice, and one of them is true, false, and I actually put more weight on multiple choices than I do on true, false. Okay, so you could weight those in this spreadsheet if you wanted to, but if you're just trying to get real quick data out of how each one did, that's all I did. So then for ICANN number 4, I just did the same thing, equals average, parentheses, and then said for 4, well, I can already see that's going to be 100%, but and I can see this mouse is going to drive me crazy. And I did the same thing for each one. I just went down through them. Here's ICANN number 8, we can see is the first one that they had a big problem with. Only 77% of them got that one right. And I just went down through there and used that to total each one. So it was really, really easy. Now the hard part is setting up your Moodle questions and labeling each one for an ICANN statement. And obviously the easiest way to do this is to do it through Moodle in the first place, because if you're not doing Moodle quizzes, you obviously can't do that either. So the hardest part I had done most of already, because I started 2 years ago saying that if I couldn't link a question to an ICANN statement, I was taking the question out of the test, because I hadn't done that before. And we went and said, hey, if it's not in an ICANN, you shouldn't be stressing it, so why would I be testing it? So how would I know if I didn't go and link it to the ICANNs? So I started putting just those numbers in the front of my questions. I think it may have been 3 years ago. I don't really remember when I started doing that. But it allowed me to, number one, make sure that all my questions actually were on an ICANN. And I actually started, when I started doing it, I started challenging my kids to say, if you find a question that's not linked to an ICANN, you'll automatically get full credit for it. And it had the kids go through the tests for me, because if everybody who got a question wrong was looking for a way to get points. And they could say, hey, this one isn't linked to an ICANN. And I went and either added it to an ICANN for the next year and said, oh, I really do think that question is important, I need to write an ICANN for it. Or I just gave them full credit and took it out of the test for the following year. Yeah. So the downside of this, in my opinion, was the fact that you'd almost need to do some more complex Excelling in order to weigh things better. if you wanted, you know, true false to weigh less or multiple choice to weigh more. The easiest way I thought of doing it, which I did not do because I was trying to get that data back to Bob, would be to do something like this. The multiple choice ones, just copy them and insert them again. So now that I've got that one more than once. That's easy way to do it. So now that question, because I thought it was more important, I wanted them to know it, is weighed more, and so now you can see it automatically started averaging C1 through C4 because I inserted in the middle. So the calculation automatically took that into account, and that's why the 9175 just went up. Because the one they got wrong was the true false, so it was what I just weighted less. I'm not saying you have to do that. I think this is probably, without even weighing it, is good enough to show data that you're looking at your ICANN statements and you're seeing what percentage of your class got it right or wrong. But I have some multiple choice. What?
At least to start with.
Yeah, it's an easy starting point. Honestly, if I had spent a little more time ahead of time, we could easily make this one just a download, and then I could make a calculation spreadsheet that automatically did all the calculations, and I'm probably going to work on that. So that I would automatically double the multiple choice points, and in my case, I like to triple the matching points. If I wanted to do like how I really do a test, I would do that, and then I could just drop this spreadsheet in number one and look at the data that I've got in number two. I could easily do that. Not easily. I could do that, and if I do that, I'll send that out to everybody that wants to do it. And so you don't have to just download, plop, and look at your data, which would be the easiest thing to do for teachers. So, but I didn't have the time to do it this time, and I didn't know what kind of time frame we were looking at as far as that data. I missed so many staff meetings that I honestly didn't know that was even coming. I don't know if everyone did or not.
We didn't really know it was coming in. That's kind of been passed over.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is an easy way to do that. The hard thing is just setting up your data ahead of your questions for that ahead of time. And if you're doing more than one summative evaluation per chapter, then you're going to have to put them both together in one spreadsheet and then reorder them too. When you do, I only have one summative evaluation at the end of chapter 1 and chapter 2. I have 2 in chapter 3. So when I do chapter 3, I'll have to do this spreadsheet and then the other spreadsheet, just add it at the bottom and then resort it by this number, and then I'll be able to get both tests together. So I have chapter 3 and chapter 4 broken up into separate tests as I go through that data stuff. So that'll make it just an extra step. It's just going to be copying and pasting that data at the bottom. Do you want me to show you how to do that again? Or was that good enough? It's not that big of a deal.
No.
Is there any way to take the self-assessment data from the feedback into an Excel spreadsheet?
I have never tried to do that. Although I don't use that as a summative thing, so I didn't even think of using that for this.
I'm thinking as a baseline. Baseline for your ICANNs, like before.
To see how.
To see how much improvement.
Now.
But you mean pre-testing is what you're talking about? Okay.
Granted, it's a self-assessment, but.
Yeah, export to Excel.
I'm just wondering.
Let's see what it looks like. I've never opened that one to see.
It's always messy like that, so I didn't know.
Well, yeah, it is, because it doesn't put this in the same column as the data. So, not that you couldn't do it. I mean, you could easily make something that pulled that out and said how many people said they were ready for the test and how many people were not. I don't know. For mine, I don't know how good this data is because I haven't reviewed the self-assessment almost every class.
I do too.
So
I do it multiple times.
the only time I really look at it is during my chapter review right before test. Because I really want the self-assessment to be a self-reflection thing more than anything else. And I say, if you say no and you're not asking me, then you're wrong. Because you should be asking me questions about those things you don't understand. But when I do my chapter review, if 100% of my class says they understand line number 1, or ICANN number 1, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it unless it's obvious to me that Deb always says yes, even if the answer is no, and I better go over that one for you.
You don't like that.
Okay.
So, I mean, you kind of get data, but I don't know what the easiest way to get the,
You did record this, right?
yeah, I am recording it. So, is that, that was the shortest Tech Tuesday ever, because it wasn't really that hard because I had it set up right, or I shouldn't say right. I had it set up that way in the first place.
If you give your assessments on Moodle.
If you give your assessments on Moodle, which is why I said in the explanation, it's like only if you can give, because like how does a math teacher do that?
I don't know.
A math teacher gets to do extra math because they're good at it.
Well, and see, I'm thinking of my tests. I mean, some of my tests I could put on Moodle, but part of my tests I have to draw chemical stuff, and I don't know how to necessarily do all of the tests on Moodle, but
Yeah.
I can do some.
You could probably do, you could probably create the Excel.
You know what you could do on Moodle? You could set them up as essay questions on Moodle, and then just have them do it on paper, and so that you'll have to hand grade it, put the grade in on Moodle, so it's still collecting all the data for you. Because I mean, there are some questions I do that aren't. I mean, I put them in as a test thing that says go do this, and it's it's an essay question, so I just have to go grade it. So you could still do it as half Moodle. 3 of them on paper. Write down the question number, say write the question at the top of the paper so you know which one it goes with.
That's a good idea.
And then you still have the data in there because you have to type the grade into Moodle anyway. On those. Yeah, because you're going to manually grade it. It just shows you manually grade it. You just have it up. And I don't know have you done manual grade stuff? It's real easy because it just lets you step through the students.
Yeah, I need to do that. Move more in that direction.
I do almost everything now.
I don't know, I'm somewhat hesitant because every time we take a test, one of the first questions is it on the computer? And when I say, no, it's on paper, oh, good.
Yeah.
And it always.
Really?
Yeah, almost to a T.
They do. They just don't want.
I don't know if it's.
Is that because it's easier to cheat on paper? Because everybody's on the same question? I mean, because it is really hard for a class to cheat on Moodle when.
Part of it is there's just so many tests, standardized tests and other things.
Is that what you think? I don't.
I think they have traditionally just used.
I don't use the timer.
Because how much
Do you use
does.
the timer?
I don't always use the timer. I occasionally use the timer, and I occasionally use the timer
It
because.
freaks them out.
Exactly, that's why I do it.
Well, they need practice with.
I do it on every.
Practice with.
I use the timer on every formative quiz. If it's a formative quiz, first of all, it's only worth 10%. Of 10% of whatever the
They don't understand that math.
No, they don't. But that's okay. But if they're freaking out on a formative assessment, it's better than them freaking out on the summative assessment.
Yeah.
So, and honestly, the summative is about whether you learned it, not how fast you can regurgitate it. So I'd rather not have it. And I understand they need to get used to time test. I totally understand that. That's why I think I like doing it on formative ones, not on summative ones.
Yeah.
Not that I never do it on a summative one, because sometimes, especially if you set it to 78 minutes,
Yeah.
well, that's just telling you that the class is about to ring.
Right.
And that's not really.
Yeah.
I've never had anybody, when I set it to the whole class period, like on a final exam, go, I didn't have enough time. Kind of keeps them aware. It's too bad they don't, if they did computerized ACTs, because that's the feedback I get from kids all the time. All of a sudden they said there was 5 minutes left and I had too many questions left to do.
And that's one of the
You have
strongest
to
things I
have
do.
a watch or your phone.
Yeah.
I don't know what all you're allowed.
You're not allowed, but you could, what they suggest is take
You have
a
a-
digital watch
Yeah.
with this, and borrow it. I mean, not even, just so that you can have it, so.
They don't have any timer on the institute?
Not, I mean, they have a clock, but